Hello everyone, my name is Pixlriffs and welcome back to the Minecraft Survival Guide. I hope you guys are having a good day. I'm stood here on top of my little tundra lodge and looking out across the wireframe mountain range that we assembled in the last episode. Very excited that you guys are hyped for this project. I think it's going to be a lot of fun and also a lot of work, and today we're going to get started on collecting some materials for all of this filling in that we've got to do, and then we will probably end up designing a little bit of the mountainside in this video, just to give you an idea of the process of that. Obviously, it's a small, relatively, amount of materials to fill in one row of this kind of wireframe here, but it's going to be a lot more materials to fill up the sides. So I'm going to grab all of these shulker boxes and take them down into the mine. We've already got a couple which are still kind of full from bringing the materials over here in the first place, but we will need a lot more, and that is why I'm quite happy that over here in the lodge we have an entire room of shulker boxes, more or less. This was going to be the bathroom initially, and I just kind of left it here as storage, but there are some shulker boxes here that can easily be condensed down, so I can bring a few more. We've also got a ton of chests in there, and I might have a couple of spare shulker boxes in my ender chest as well. So today we are going to do a lot of resource mining off camera, or rather I'm going to do that on a live stream that will have happened yesterday at the time this video went out, and all of that is just going to be some beacon mining down at the diamond level so we can get a few resources as well. But I'm going to mine with haste 2 and efficiency, get as much regular natural stone as I can, and then we're going to start designing this mountainside. And much as I would like to get all of the stone from the local area just because it's going to be easier to transport it here, I kind of don't want to do that at the same time because I'm still trying to avoid it snowing in this biome at any point, just so it doesn't affect any of the stuff we are building around here, so I don't end up with snow covering this entire car park, because that is a surface that is easily disturbed by a shovel, and shoveling snow on top of that, I guess we could probably pour water over it, but again, that would turn the concrete powder back into concrete. You know, there are issues with snow falling around here, so what I'm actually going to do is fly a little bit further away, so we are outside of the area where this ski resort project would be loaded, and we're probably going to do some beacon mining in a mountain biome somewhere nearby, because I like to collect emerald ore whenever I am speed mining with beacons, and so I feel like finding a mountain nearby would probably be a fun idea. I also want to see if we can do something with this pillager watchtower at some point, but for now I'm going to leave that well enough alone. So just north of the mountains project we have a regular Minecraft generated mountains biome, and this place looks like it's going to be a nice place to start. It's not too high in terms of elevation, so we're not going to be digging too far down to start our beacon mine. I think this will be a good place to begin here. And I know they say not to dig straight down, but if you straddle the line between two blocks like so, you can kind of start to dig down without worrying too much about falling directly in lava. You will usually see the lava over one block before you end up digging into it in the next block. So hopefully we shouldn't encounter anything like that down here. We can set up a beacon at around Y11, and from there we can dig out a whole lot of stone. So I'm going to go ahead and start this beacon mine project. I'll see you guys on the other side. So after about 3 hours of beacon haste mining, I have myself a pretty decent amount of stone. Not all of these shulker boxes are complete with stone. We have an andesite box here and a dirt box there, but basically all the rest of these, plus the little extra that you can see down here, is all natural stone that I have silk touched, and I even made myself a backup silk touch pickaxe so that we could do a little bit more mining. I also got myself a fair amount of precious resources, it's fair to say, including over half a stack of emerald ore, very happy with that, and a few other resources that I'm going to keep around here instead of taking them back to my base at Founder's Forge, because my plan for this set of mountains is actually to put a little bit of stuff inside of here. I think a storage system for the area would be nice to put inside of here somewhere, but also I would love to do a Lord of the Rings-esque dwarven hall inside the mountain somewhere. Erebor or Moria or one of those kind of things. Probably not a direct copy of like the set from the films, maybe just kind of coming up with our own lore for it, but using that stuff as an inspiration, definitely. I love the idea of doing something like that. So now we actually get to put all of this recently gotten stone to good use, filling out some of the, what I'm thinking of as the panels of the mountain between these kind of like key lines that we have running down the sides here. So I'm going to grab a bunch of the stone here and make a start, probably stash away some of the other stuff that I don't really want to worry about right now, including that box of riches. I'll need to make sure I remember where that is. But basically all we're going to do is just join up a few blocks of this from the bottom upwards. And ideally, we're not going to do that in a particularly complicated way. I would like to keep the structure of the mountain, at least at the bottom here, as simple as possible for the time being. Remember, we can always layer details on top of it, but the thing is, if you get like a flat wall like this, if you have a kind of flat surface and then you kind of augment it into another flat surface and you kind of have them join like that, it looks so much cleaner when you come away from that than it does if you put a bunch of blocks sort of all over the place so that every block is casting a shadow on another block, and from certain perspectives, it can look really busy. We are primarily going to be looking at these mountains from further away, and so I'm kind of interested to see what effects we can create by making sections which are effectively, you know, sheer cliff faces and stuff like that, stuff protruding from the rock here and there, but not just trying to place everything offset from each other. That's the idea. We want some of this to feel a little bit like a taller cliff face, the sort of thing that it would be impossible for regular people to walk up. And so I feel like around the foot of the mountain here, of course, we're going to have a little bit more of a flat area, and the sort of roots of the mountain, as I'm thinking of them, can still end up going out a little bit further from this line. But I think we really want to just start joining up the bottom of the mountain here, maybe following the natural ridge of the terrain so we don't have to build quite so much, and having sections of it which get a little slimmer and a little thicker as we go around here. And what we end up with is a relatively straight line. It's almost as though we've done this drawing a curve kind of thing, except in this case we're not looking for a perfect geometrical shape. We're looking for something that feels a little bit more organically formed. And while I am going to be filling in some areas down here, this mountain is definitely not going to be full all the way to the top. We're not going to fill this entire structure with stone. Even if we did that with lava casting, pouring lava and water alternately down from the tops of these mountains, it would take forever, and I'm really not keen on wasting that amount of material on the inside of this place. I also want to avoid wasting, if we possibly can, avoid wasting putting blocks down here as placeholders, so that if I put a block there so that I can place a block above it, I don't want to lose blocks that way where I possibly can, because despite the fact we have a huge amount of stone, each block is going to be a little bit more precious, and so I'm going to be working on a few ways that we can avoid doing that as we go here. But I think this section here is potentially going to feel like a little bit of a smaller, craggy section here at the bottom if we end up with maybe a line that goes up like that. Yeah, that seems like it works okay. And as we continue to build up, we're going to layer on these stone sections line by line so that it meets up with these guidelines that we've built all the way up to the peak. And this is going to be a long project. It's going to take a lot of work, but I think these guidelines are actually going to be pretty good for what we want them to do. For now, I'm going to keep it all as stone just so we can see the overall effect until we get to those patches of dirt where I'm fairly certain I want a kind of dirt ridge to form around there, and that's where we're going to start placing down some of the initial kind of like overflowing areas of snow, where the snow is going to have come cascading down the mountain from the top and has come to rest in these specific areas. We will, of course, dot the snow around some of the other blocks here as well, but it's going to be nice to have some structure to the mountain by leaving those areas flat so they can receive the drifts of snow that have come on down. So we're going to build up this slope until we get to that dirt section there, and there is where we're going to draw our first ridge line. Okay, so what we've got here is the first little leg of this panel of the mountain, and I've used up a lot of stone already. I've had to dip back into the chest for the rest of the loose stone that was in here, and now we're going to break out the dirt, because now we're going to draw our first ridge up there. Although it's not quite our first ridge, but because as I got up here, I realized that the left-hand side over here was kind of flattening out. As far as the guideline was concerned, it was spending a little bit of time on the flat before it went vertical again. And so I ended up building a couple of flatter sections here where, of course, we would probably get some snow building up along the sides. You might have noticed that this just looks like a bit of a grey lump right now, and eventually what we're going to do is come back through with a second pass with a bunch of different materials, and we're going to terraform this in much the same way we terraformed the mountain path over at Founder's Forge, except without the path element to it. So we're going to add in some spruce leaves, we're going to add in some snow, we're going to add some materials that feel appropriate for the area, and we're not going to add this pillager patrol, so bear with me while I despawn those guys. Another thing that is worth noting as we get a little further into this project is that the areas underneath this are of course going to get very dark, and despite the fact that there is a layer of snow on the ground, that first layer of snow that spawns naturally in these biomes does nothing to prevent mob spawns. It doesn't even increase the height of the player. For all intents and purposes, that snow there may not even exist, and so I feel like we should probably try and break out some coal and get some torches underneath here to prevent stuff from spawning in the near future. I don't think I have any coal on me right now, even though I've got the sticks, so I will probably have to fortune some of the coal ore that I have in my box of riches, or maybe dip into the ender chest and grab some coal out of my fuel box. While we're here in the house, I may as well grab a few extra planks that I can use for sticks, because yes, we are going to need a whole lot of torches to light up the underside of this mountain. Where's the fuel box? There it is. Okay, let's grab half a stack of coal from here. Great. And we even had some sticks in there, I suppose, if we wanted those. Let's make ourselves a stack of torches. And I grabbed my fortune pickaxe as well, so we can always fortune some of the coal that I gathered. Let's take a quick look at how this is shaping up from the air. You can see that ridge a lot more clearly from there, and the next ridge up here is the one we're going to be focusing on next. So we're going to set up an area here. We might even grow a couple of trees on the side of this mountain, because it's not unheard of that you would end up with a couple of trees growing, even in these areas where conditions are pretty harsh. So we're going to break out the dirt. We're going to outline this a little bit in some more stone, but then we will end up with a bunch of dirt laying down a path, traveling a little bit downwards, because the area over there is a couple of blocks down vertically from the area where the dirt starts up here. So we're going to lay out a relatively flat area that just dips by a block or two halfway down the middle. And once again, we're not looking for that super detailed approach quite yet, so I'm not going to add in coarse dirt and stuff like that. I'm not going to add in the trees and so forth yet. I'm really just looking for the overall outline of a shelf on the mountain where we can lay down some snow. We'll probably just silk touch a single piece of grass from down here and let that spread. You're letting the daylight spread the grass to the other areas of dirt around here. And I'm looking to tuck this dirt shelf pretty far back in the structure of the mountain, because that's going to allow us to add in some fairly sheer cliff formations right behind this, which is really going to add some dynamic to what could otherwise be a fairly gentle slope upwards. You want it to have plateaus, and you also want it to have sheer sections that would just be impassable for people. It could also end up being the entrance to our dwarven stronghold once we end up figuring out where that is going to go in the structure of all of this stuff. But personally, I'm just kind of tickled by the concept that humans would completely have overlooked the fact there was a dwarf stronghold in this mountain they decided to turn into a ski resort. Or maybe the dwarven halls have laid long abandoned, and this is just like what the site is used for now, centuries after the dwarven civilization has perished. Once again, as with Founders Forge, I'm trying to layer in areas of lore into this area of the world where there are currently none. As always, it's about figuring out ways your imagination can start to fill in the gaps for you a little bit. So I think as far as a dirt ridge goes, that should be okay. Maybe we'll tuck it a little further back on this side, and then we'll end up making a more sheer cliff section here, especially where the guidelines allow for it. We've got a few 3 or 4 block vertical sections coming up here that could be very good for a little cliff face. Maybe even like a small frozen pond or something could go here eventually. We'll figure that stuff out later though. That's for the detailing phase. For now, we are just after bulk in this mountain. And at long last, we have reached the summit. We are at the peak, and basically the entire thing is filled in. And I gotta be honest, it looks a little bit weird to me right now. It's not quite as smooth as I wanted it to be. If I turn around and take a look, obviously that's a lot of stuff has been filled in. So it looks kind of, I don't know, it looks sort of impressive by itself, but I really feel like we could do a lot to make this look a little bit more natural, and it's really going to be removing a lot of those sections of the terrain that look kind of jagged. I want it to look more rounded, like it's made of plates almost. Not so much that it's made of lots of little jagged rocks, but that it's made out of larger sections of rock, just to remove a little bit of the noise I think is what's going on here. I like the sections a little bit further up, where like there especially, there are larger sections which are just flat sections of the rock, and that looks a lot more natural to me than all of this jumbly stuff. So what I'm thinking about doing is going back over with a bit more stone, and we've already used, let me keep track of how many shulker boxes I have emptied of the stone in here. I guess we've got one there, and this one is almost empty. I think we've been through all of the stone that was left over in the chest as well. So there's actually a bunch of, like maybe 3 shulker boxes worth of stone has gone into this, not to mention the dirt on those ridges as well. But yeah, I want to smooth out the landscape here a little bit so everything is more kind of flat in sections, as though it's made out of like separate little plates instead of lots of these little higgledy-piggledy sections. I think if you're landscaping smaller stuff, all of these little sections make sense. If you're doing larger stuff, they just make everything look far too busy. The eye has nowhere to rest. So yeah, I think what I'm going to do is take a second pass at this in the form of a time-lapse, and we're going to smooth everything out a little bit. It's probably going to mean we use a bit more stone than I initially planned to, but hey, this stuff is coming out of the ground, and we might even look a little bit later in the week into making an automatic cobblestone generator attached to a smelter that can constantly produce stone for us so we don't have to go and dig it up. I feel like producing stuff instead of digging it out of the ground is ultimately going to be a better thing for this project. So I'm going to bring my camera account in, not only because I'm doing a time-lapse, but also because it's going to be easier when looking at the holistic view of this, looking at it from a distance. It's going to be a lot easier to see which details I'm changing and which ones we can smooth out a little bit more. Going to get some sleep, going to bring the camera account in, and let's get a time-lapse done. Hey folks, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the time-lapse, and while this isn't looking perfect, I do think it's now looking a lot cleaner just by tidying up some of those loose blocks. And I think the trick really is to make sure there are as few one block changes in height as possible, and I've got a few of them still around there that I want to tidy up that just weren't really all that visible when I was doing the time-lapse, but I really think that closing off some of those and making sure that all of these are in connected sections and kind of building as though your blocks are larger than the standard Minecraft blocks really helps when you are building something of this size. And of course, we can put a little bit more detail in later. We can add slabs and all of that kind of stuff and, terraform some of this to make it look a little bit more detailed, but you don't want to go overboard on the detail. You want to start with something which is, relatively speaking, a bit of a blank canvas. What I've also done here in terms of detail as well is start putting some snow layers in, and this was about, 7 or 8 stacks of snow layers, which it really doesn't look like from here, but layering them up, of course, takes a few extra. But this is what I'm talking about with the detail you can get in with snow. You kind of need to have somewhere that the eye can look that isn't covered in detail like this, just so your eye isn't recoiling from how busy the whole scene is. And so this is going to take a little bit more tweaking, I think, and obviously we're going to try and adapt that style when we come to build the next set of panels of the mountain, because this right here has taken me probably, I would estimate, about 4 hours worth of work, and like I said, 3 shulker boxes worth of stone and dirt. That's a lot of materials, that's a lot of time. So this is definitely something we're going to be doing in stages over the next few weeks. Obviously, the videos themselves won't be about the mountains every single time, but it's really nice to see this stuff start to come together. We can build on streams and in videos. So head over to twitch.tv/Pixlriffs if you want to see that stuff come together live. But I think as far as this video is concerned, we are probably done. And it's really just a matter of repeating this process until the structure of the mountain is in place. And at that point, I think I really want to go in with terraforming with different materials, bringing in trees, bringing in leaves, all of the kind of stuff that's really going to make this mountain come to life a lot more. Not to mention, once we have the rest of the structure of the surrounding mountains planned out, our ski route, which is eventually going to come down and end up around here. The mountains will probably expand a little as well. This is looking a little bit kind of cartoonish, the way it just stops here, so the base may spread out a little bit further, but as far as these things go, it's really just going to be a matter of diving in and starting them. So that's going to be it for this episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide. I do hope you've enjoyed this look at building mountains. Don't forget to leave a like on the episode if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye for now.